5:30 a.m., December 16th, 1944. The Ardennes Forest. The first shell didn't just explode. It vaporized the morning mist. In an instant, 2,000 German artillery pieces opened fire. There was no warning. There was no transition. The horizon became a solid wall of concussive fire. This was not a tactical strike. It was a systematic attempt to grind the earth and everything on it into dust. High explosive rounds tore through the canopy of frozen pines, turning ancient trees into jagged wooden shrapnel that rained down on the men below. The shock waves were so violent they ruptured eardrums and collapsed lungs instantly. The ground didn't just tremble, it buckled. This is the reality of the Ardennes. This is the end of the ghost front. Move back 6 hours. Look at the front line. The temperature is 10 degrees below zero. This is not a cold winter. This is a biological attack. American soldiers are crouched in holes 2 feet wide, filled with 6 inches of freezing water. Their boots have been wet for 3 days. The skin on their feet is turning a sickly, translucent white before rotting away in their socks. This is trench foot. It smells like decaying meat. Men use their bayonets to cut off their boots, only to find their skin peeling away with the wool. There are no heaters. There are no fires. To light a match is to invite a German sniper's bullet through your skull. In their pockets, they carry letters from home. These are not symbols of hope. They are damp, disintegrating scraps of paper. The ink has run, turning the names of wives and mothers into illegible blue stains. The soldiers don't feel heroic. They feel forgotten. They are starving. Their K rations are frozen solid, requiring them to chip away at the meat with knives, eating shards of ice that burn their throats. The fear of the invisible. The forest is thick, suffocating. Visibility is less than 20 yards. Out there, in the gray fog, the German army is moving. They aren't just soldiers. They are the remnants of the Eastern Front, hardened by the brutality of Russia. They are moving in total silence. They have wrapped the wheels of their cannons in heavy rags. They use horses to drag their equipment through the deep drifts. You cannot hear them coming. You can only hear the sound of your own labored breathing and the terrifying crack of a freezing branch snapping under the weight of the snow. Every time a branch snaps, a dozen M1 Garands click off their safeties. The soldiers are trigger happy, paralyzed by the knowledge that German commandos, wearing American uniforms and speaking perfect English, are already behind their lines. Trust has evaporated. Men are shooting at shadows, shooting at their own scouts, shooting at anything that moves in the white haze. The metal monsters. Then, through the fog, comes the sound that stops every heart. The mechanical screech of dry metal on metal. The Tiger II. 70 tons of German steel. The ground doesn't just shake, it thuds. These tanks are so heavy, they crush the frozen corpses of those killed in the initial barrage, grinding bone and gear into the mud. The American 57mm anti-tank guns are useless. Their shells bounce off the Tiger's frontal armor like pebbles. The American crews watch in horror as their best shots ricochet into the trees, while the Tiger's 88mm gun pivots slowly, locking onto their position. The impact of an 88mm shell on a Jeep or a thin-walled M8 Greyhound isn't just an explosion. It is a shredding of reality. The metal skin of the vehicle becomes shrapnel. The men inside are not killed by the blast. They are shredded by the very machine they thought would protect them. 9 a.m., the massacre begins. By mid-morning, the American line is a series of isolated, bleeding islands. Communication lines are cut. Radios are dead. In the Malmedy crossroads, dozens of American prisoners are lined up in a field. This is the reality of the Waffen-SS. There is no Geneva Convention here. There is only the rhythmic thump, thump, thump of an MG-42 machine gun. The Americans fall into the snow, one by one. The Germans walk among the bodies, delivering a single shot to the head of anyone still breathing. The snow is no longer white. It is a deep, steaming burgundy. The air is thick with the smell of cordite, burnt gasoline, and the metallic tang of fresh blood. There is no music. There are no Christmas carols. There is only the sound of men screaming for medic in a forest where no help is coming. The fog has grounded every Allied plane. No P-47s are coming to save them. No supplies are being dropped. They are alone in the Ardennes. They are surrounded by an enemy that has nothing left to lose. The blood-red Christmas has just begun. And for thousands of these men, the last thing they will ever see is the flash of a German muzzle in the Belgian mist. This is not a story. This is what happened. December 20th, 1944. The fog hasn't lifted. It has thickened, turning the Ardennes into a claustrophobic tomb of gray ice and white death. There is no sun. There is no sky. There is only the person standing 2 feet in front of you. And even they look like a fading ghost. The siege of Bastogne has begun. The 101st Airborne and remnants of the 10th Armored are now completely encircled. 7 German divisions have wrapped themselves around this tiny Belgian crossroads like a tightening noose. We are trapped in a perimeter that shrinks with every tick of the clock. There is no way out. There is no way in. All roads are cut. All bridges are blown. We are an island of olive drab in a sea of field gray. The cold is now a lethal weapon, as deadly as any German shell. It is 20 degrees below zero. Men are suffering from grade 4 frostbite. Their skin is turning black, becoming hard and brittle like charcoal. When they try to move their toes, the frozen flesh cracks and bleeds, but there is no warmth to stop the rot. We are out of winter gear. Most men are wearing summer uniforms under thin overcoats. They wrap their feet in burlap sacks and hay, anything to keep the ice from touching the skin. It doesn't work. The dampness seeps through everything. The hunger is a physical ache in the gut. We are down to 1 meal a day, usually a cold spoonful of beans or a dry cracker. We are scavengers now. We strip the boots and coats off the dead because the dead don't need to stay warm anymore. Every foxhole is a frozen sewer. We sleep in shifts of 20 minutes because if you sleep longer, the hypothermia takes hold and you simply never wake up. You die in your sleep, huddled in a ball of frozen wool. Then comes the sound, the low, guttural growl of Maybach engines, the Panzer IVs and the Tigers. They don't need the roads. They crawl through the forest, snapping trees like toothpicks. Our 57mm anti-tank guns are freezing up. The oil is too thick to move the gears. When the panzers appear out of the fog, they look like prehistoric monsters. They don't fire from a distance. They drive right up to the lip of the foxholes and crush the men inside. You can hear the sound of the wooden logs we used for cover splintering under 60 tons of steel. You hear the screams of men being buried alive in the mud they dug themselves. We are out of morphine. In the makeshift aid stations, usually the cellars of bombed-out stone houses, the surgeons are working by candlelight. There are no anesthetics left. When a man's leg is shredded by shrapnel, they hold him down and use a butcher's saw. You can hear the screams from 2 blocks away, echoing through the empty, shattered streets of Bastogne. The floors are slick with blood that won't stay liquid. It turns into a red, gelatinous ice that men slip on while carrying the stretchers. The ammunition is gone. Men are counting their bullets. 5 rounds, 3 rounds, 1 clip left. The order is passed down the line. Don't fire until you can see the color of their eyes. We are waiting for the final rush. We are waiting for the bayonet. On December 22nd, 2 German officers walk toward our lines under a white flag. They carry a formal demand for honorable surrender. They cite the total encirclement and the certain annihilation of the American forces. They give us 2 hours. Brigadier General McAuliffe looks at the paper. He doesn't give a speech. He doesn't cite the Constitution. He sits at a wooden table in a cold basement and writes a single word: nuts. The Germans don't understand it. They ask for a translation. The colonel tells them, in plain English, go to hell. The German response is immediate and apocalyptic. Since they cannot take the town by ground, they decide to erase it from the map. That night, the Luftwaffe arrives. Heinkel bombers drone overhead, unseen in the black clouds. They drop their payloads blindly into the center of Bastogne. The stone houses collapse. The church is gutted. The aid stations are hit, killing the wounded in their beds. The town is burning, but there is no warmth in the fire. Only the smell of burning limestone and scorched flesh. The terror of the night is absolute. You are sitting in a hole, hearing the whistling of the falling bombs, knowing that if one lands within 10 yards, the pressure alone will liquefy your internal organs. You pray, you curse, you hold your M1 Garand so tight your knuckles turn white. You watch the flashes of the explosions, and for a split second, you see the silhouettes of your buddies, huddled and shivering, waiting for the end. There is no Merry Christmas here. On the night of the 24th, the German soldiers in the woods begin to sing Stille Nacht, Silent Night. The melody drifts over the frozen fields, beautiful and haunting. For a moment, the shooting stops, but then an American machine gunner opens up, tracing a line of red tracers into the dark. The song ends in a spray of bullets. There is no room for peace. There is no room for mercy. There is only the kill. We are fighting for every yard of frozen dirt. In the woods of Bulge, The 506th is being hammered by tree bursts. The German artillery is fused to explode in the treetops, raining down a vertical hail of jagged steel and wooden shrapnel. You can't hide in a foxhole from a tree burst. The metal comes straight down. It rips through helmets. It tears shoulders from torsos. Men are found dead with their hands over their heads, trying to shield themselves from a sky that is literally falling. The terror is the isolation. You feel like the last army on Earth. You wonder if Washington even knows you're still alive. You wonder if the people back home are opening presents while you're chewing on a frozen piece of leather to keep your jaw from locking. You are exhausted beyond human limit. Your eyes are bloodshot and sunken. Your heart skips beats. You are a walking corpse, held together by nothing but the refusal to die in this God-forsaken forest. Then the fog begins to thin. Just a little. A pale, sickly light starts to filter through the pines. You look up, and for the first time in a week, you see it. A patch of blue. A tiny, freezing sliver of sky. And then you hear it. Not the drone of the Luftwaffe, but the high-pitched whistle of P-47 Thunderbolts and the roar of C-47 transport planes. The airdrop is coming, but the Panzers are already at the gates. The final assault is launching. The German infantry is screaming as they charge across the open snow, their white camouflage suits making them look like a wave of ghosts. They are coming for the crossroads. They are coming to finish what they started on the 16th. The blood in the snow is fresh. The screams are louder than ever. This isn't a battle for a map. This is a battle for the soul of every man in that forest. And as the first parachute opens in the sky, you realize that even if you survive the next hour, the Ardennes has already taken something from you that you can never get back. The nightmare of the siege isn't just that they surrounded us. It's that they forced us to become as cold and as hard as the ice we were dying in. The fog didn't just lift. It evaporated, exposing the carnage to a sun that offered light but no heat. The sky was a brilliant, mocking blue, and for the first time in 10 days, the Allied air forces screamed overhead. But for us on the ground, the horror was only beginning to reveal its full scale. The retreating Germans weren't just leaving, they were burning everything they touched. As we pushed out from the perimeter of Bastogne, we moved through a landscape that didn't look like Earth anymore. It looked like the moon. If the moon were made of frozen mud and shattered bone. The smell was the first thing that hit you. The sickening, sweet stench of thawing corpses and burnt gasoline. We found them in the woods of Bois-Jacques, men frozen in their foxholes, their eyes still open, looking like marble statues. Some were still holding a half-eaten K-ration or a photograph of a girl back home. They hadn't died from bullets. They had simply run out of heat. Then, we reached the crossroads near Malmedy. We had heard the rumors through the radio static, but the reality was a punch to the gut that left us breathless. In a snow-covered field, we found them. Dozens of American boys, prisoners of war, lying in neat rows where they had been mowed down by SS machine guns. They weren't killed in combat. They were executed. You could see the powder burns on their foreheads, where the Germans had walked among the wounded to deliver the coup de grace. Their blood had melted deep, jagged holes into the snow before freezing into solid pillars of crimson ice. The fear turned into something colder than the wind. It turned into a black, hollow rage. There was no more talk of honorable enemies. There was only the hunt. We tracked the retreating SS units by the trail of discarded equipment and the bodies of Belgian civilians they had murdered along the way. In every village, the story was the same. Old men shot on their doorsteps, women huddled in cellars, the smell of cordite hanging over empty cradles. The Bulge was collapsing, but the Germans fought for every inch of that frozen hell with the desperation of cornered rats. They used King Tigers as stationary pillboxes, burying them in the snow so only the lethal 88mm snout was visible. We had to crawl through the slush, inch by agonizing inch, dragging satchel charges and grenades. There was no room for tactical elegance. It was a brutal, primal slugfest. You killed or you were rendered into meat. I remember a young German soldier, no older than 16, crying in a ditch with his legs torn off. He was clutching a small wooden crucifix and calling for his mother in a voice that sounded like a bird's chirp. We didn't stop. We couldn't. The Ardennes had stripped the mercy out of us. We just kept walking, our boots heavy with the frozen slush of 1,000 lives. By the time the lines were restored, the cost was laid bare. 80,000 American casualties. The snow was a patchwork of olive drab and field gray rags. The silence returned to the forest, but it wasn't the silence of peace. It was the silence of a graveyard. On New Year's Eve, there were no celebrations. We sat in the ruins of a Belgian farmhouse, staring into a small fire made from broken chairs. We looked at each other and didn't recognize the faces staring back. The eyes were different. They were 1,000-yard stares, hollow, dark, and bottomless. We had survived the greatest counterattack in history, but we left our souls somewhere back in the tree line. We won the battle. We broke the German back. But as the trucks started rolling toward the Rhine, nobody cheered. We just watched the white hills of the Ardennes recede in the distance, knowing that for the rest of our lives, whenever the wind turned cold or the fog rolled in, we'd be right back there. In the dark, in the ice, in the blood-red Christmas of 1944. War isn't the explosions. It isn't the medals. It's the sound of a shovel hitting frozen dirt to bury a friend you just shared a cigarette with an hour ago. It's the realization that the world can turn into a slaughterhouse in the time it takes to say a prayer. The Ardennes didn't just break the German army. It broke the idea that humanity had a bottom. We found the bottom in the snow, and it was colder than anyone ever told us.